A small New York landlord was finally able to see inside their unit, and they were greeted by a gruesome sight of a urine-stenched, completely trashed apartment. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. Alright, so I have an interesting article for you today, and it's going over the topic of, once again, another story of a small landlord who suffered horribly during the whole eviction moratorium nonsense. Okay, I'm still bringing these stories up. There's still people suffering right now. There's still people who haven't been compensated the rent that they're owed. There's still people who have tenants in their units who are not paying to this very day, even though it's been 2 years since all this nonsense started. Now, this story is obviously, it's coming out of one of the most tenant-friendly anti-landlord places in the entire country, New York City. Okay, so obviously this is going to be bad, but I need to get these messages out there. I need to show people that, hey, landlords, we're not all these big, super rich people who can just deal with this nonsense. And tenants aren't all, saints and, they're just struggling. And no, they are horrible people in some cases, okay? Some of them have nothing but bad intentions. They just want to screw the landlord over and get to stay somewhere for free, which in my mind is nothing short of stealing, okay? You stay in somewhere that, you stay in a landlord's house, you don't pay rent, you're stealing that unit from the landlord, okay? And that is wrong, okay? Stealing is wrong. I mean, if you don't know that, you're a moron. But simply put, that's why I have no patience for these tenants who don't pay their rent. And on top of not paying their rent, these tenants trashed the unit. And the whole place stank of urine. Oh, that's wonderful, right? You after finally being able to get your unit back, you have a trashed unit, and it's horrible. And these landlords in this situation, they were actually living in the second unit of a duplex. So they lived in one part, the tenant lived in the other. So they had to deal with this nonsense the whole time while this tenant wasn't paying. Oh man, I couldn't even imagine, just the things going through my mind. I mean, you have to understand what goes through a landlord's mind before they finally get to the breaking point. I've heard of these bad situations where landlords get to the breaking point and then they might be doing some stuff that is kind of, trying to get their tenants out, a little bit shady, trying to get their tenants out of their units. Well, it's hard to blame them when there's so much nonsense like this going on, okay? Now, before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like and subscribe button, maybe leave a comment down below, and let me know what you want to see on this channel. I'm just getting back from my cruise vacation. I went down and saw beautiful Honduras, Belize, and Mexico. And, I was gone for a week, but now I'm trying to get back into the news, and I want to bring you the best articles possible. So, this article is coming from therealdeal.com, and it says, flooded by dog urine, assaulted by tenants, landlords still locked out. Let's see what it says. It had been more than 2 years since Kanisha Gilbert set eyes on her upstairs apartment. Gilbert and her husband had rented the second floor unit of their 2-family home in East Flatbush, Brooklyn, to a married couple and their 3 children. 2 years of unrelenting misery later, she was getting her first chance to see why her ceilings were coated with urine and her stairwell ravaged by an unbearable stench. A dangerous leak had given Gilbert emergency access to the apartment. Stepping into the swarm of flies that engulfed the second floor landing that August day, the landlord mounted her phone to a selfie stick and steeled herself for a gruesome sight. Yeah, and it's smart that she went in there with a camera and got recordings of this, because go to the eviction court, show them that, okay? Show them exactly what it looked like. And hopefully she has pictures from before she leased the unit out as well, and say, hey, this is what I leased to them, and this is what they returned to me. That way, if she needs to sue them for damages, she'll have pure evidence of just how badly they had damaged the place. But the worst part is, that they actually lived in the other units. So they probably had this stench coming into their walls the whole time, and there was nothing they could do about it. And that's just absolutely awful. Oh, and yeah, it says they have 3 children. So imagine your kids having to deal with this nonsense. Part of the reason why I don't house hack anymore is because, I'm afraid of some situation like this happening. I used to house hack back when I was a single guy without a family, but now I'm married and I have a daughter and, a dog, and I just don't want to deal with it. Telling sign. Gilbert and her husband, Roderick Charles, had bought the townhome at 649 East 94th Street in the spring of 2018 ahead of their move from Arizona. They renovated its 2 units with stainless steel appliances and shiny hardwood floors. Charles and the couple's 2 children settled in the basement and first floor. Gilbert, an OBGYN, would follow a few months later after finishing her work contract out west. Tenants all their life, it would be their first go as landlords. In February 2019, they leased the apartment to Trevor and Kim Evelyn. Trevor worked for the city sanitation department, and public records showed his salary was enough to cover the $2,500 rent. So, yeah, they were moving into their first place. They had always rented before. This was the first time they were going to be a landlord. This is the only property they own, and horrible tenants move in. Okay? And the worst thing about this is when you read that, hey, this tenant actually had a decent job where they didn't lose their pay throughout the entire pandemic. I mean, they worked for the city sanitation department. So why would you lose your income if you work for the government? You wouldn't, okay? The sanitation department, you're still going to be working even during the pandemic. So you shouldn't have lost your income. So why weren't you paying your rent? Other than the fact that you knew as a bad tenant, they know what they're doing, okay? They know that nobody's going to ever figure out that they weren't actually suffering financially through all this, okay? They know that they can screw that landlord over, and that's exactly what they did. And then they're going to move along before anyone catches on, okay? And fortunately for them, it was years, okay? And meanwhile, they're just slobs, they got dog urine everywhere and flies, and it's nasty. It's horrible. But I'll go back and I'll say this, right? Just because the tenant has a good job doesn't mean that they're a good tenant. You still have to do all of your tenant screening, and I don't know if they did or not, but maybe there was a red flag that you could catch. Of course, in places like New York, they're trying to make it so landlords can't even see red flags, which that's a completely ridiculous thing on its own. Oh, you can't look at prior eviction history, you can't look at credit history, you can't look at criminal history. That's what they want to do. They want to take away our ability to screen tenants to prevent situations like this from occurring. And I have a big problem with that as well. But that's a different story. So let me continue. The Evelyns caught up on rent by April, but other red flags soon emerged, Gilbert said. The tenants would clog the toilet with baby wipes, sending water streaming into Gilbert's apartment below. They left garbage in the entryway and got into loud fights that disturbed Gilbert's grade school-aged children. The disputes would often end with Kim Evelyn locking her husband out. By October, Gilbert, still in Arizona, was fielding middle-of-the-night calls from Kim Evelyn, screaming, yelling, and cursing that Charles had knocked on her door to confront her about the noise or flooding. Gilbert notified the Evelyns that month that she would not renew their lease and mailed reminders every month. The tenants never acknowledged getting them, Gilbert said. Yeah, that's why you should send it certified mail, okay? You have to sign for certified mail, okay? So, yeah, that way you would have the acknowledgement for sure. Or you could have got a process server, but certified mail is a little bit cheaper. 12 days before the lease was up in February 2020, Gilbert texted Kim Evelyn to arrange a time to collect the keys and inspect the apartment. There was no response. She texted again 4 days later. Still nothing. Evelyn finally texted back 5 days before her lease's end date. She'd had a death in the family, she explained, and would confirm a time for the inspection that Friday, the day before she would need to move. Gilbert sympathized and agreed. Yeah, no sympathy. No, you have to follow a strict set of rules, a strict set of policies, and there's no exceptions. And that is probably part of the reason for this, because it says here that was in February of 2020, right? So imagine if you had been able to coerce this tenant to leave before the pandemic had began. Then you wouldn't have been stuck with them for the next 2 years, Oh man, this is absolutely insane. Let me see if they have. I don't see any pictures here. of the unit, but I usually, okay, yeah, they do have, it looks like a little video, and I'll try to throw it up, at the end of my video, just to kind of show you how it looks like they have animals in little cages, and wow, a little bit crazy there. But yeah, this whole story is just another ridiculous example of how badly landlords suffered throughout the entire pandemic. And hopefully, with all of the state eviction moratoriums sort of ending, except for like California, then we can get back to normal. And I truly sympathize with these small landlords, and if it was up to me, I would tell them, hey, just sell this place. It's not worth being a landlord in New York. This isn't your primary job. The lady, she's an OBGYN. That's a pretty decent job. Just focus on your job. If you do want to invest in real estate, invest out of state in the Midwest or the South, where they're much more landlord friendly.